Okay, Gerri.
Okay, Gerri. Hi, my name is Gerri. I am a food addict, and
Hi,
I am a
Gerri.
member. Oh, hi. I am a member of Overeaters Anonymous. You know, most people, if you say to them you're a drug addict or an alcoholic, they go, "Oh, okay." But if I say to you I'm powerless over a cupcake, you go, "Huh?" Right? I want to just really emphasize that food addiction can be deadly. My mother died of food addiction. She was morbidly obese. She couldn't walk. She couldn't dress herself. She couldn't bathe herself. If she fell down, we had to call 911 because we couldn't lift her up. By the end of her life, she was pretty much confined to a wheelchair. She was essentially a prisoner inside her own body. The doctor said, "You know, your mom died of kidney failure." I went, "No. My mother died from the disease of compulsive overeating." Because by the time she died, most of her organs started shutting down. They just couldn't cope. And I also suffer from the same disease, compulsive overeating. My drug of choice was always sugar. White flour was a close second. When I'd go really crazy, that's all I would eat. Candy, cookies, ice cream, sugar all day. I wouldn't eat real food because after you eat desserts all day, real food tastes like cardboard. I could give up sugar for short periods of time, but I always took it back. So that compulsion to eat sugar pretty much ruled my life. I finally hit bottom when I was going through menopause. I was getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and I couldn't stop. I had nightmares. I was going to wake up weighing 500 pounds. I didn't know what to do. None of my diets worked anymore. So a friend of mine said, "Why don't you try Overeaters Anonymous?" I had never heard of it. This was 2002, and I dragged my butt into an OA meeting in Maui, Hawaii. That's where I was living. I walk into this room in the back of a church full of complete strangers, and they're talking about very weird things like steps, traditions, and God. Did I walk into the wrong room? How do you get skinny? You know what I mean? So I thought they were crazy, but after a while they started talking about what they did with food. They did crazy things with food. They ate burnt food. They ate frozen food. They ate food off trays in the hallways of hotels. I started to relax. They said, "You know, it's not your fault you do these crazy things with food. You really have an illness and there is a solution. You need to get a sponsor and go to lots of meetings." But there weren't a lot of OA meetings in Maui. So I went to open AA meetings so I could hear the message. And I bought $150 worth of OA speaker tapes so I could hear the message. Some of those speakers blew my mind. One woman said, "I had 5 miscarriages and I didn't pick up the food." Another woman said, "You know, my husband left me for my best friend and I didn't pick up the food." And I went, "Oh my God, how did they do that?" I didn't know how they did it, but I started to get a lot of hope. Well, I couldn't find an OA sponsor on Maui, so I got online and I found an email sponsor. This was a woman with 15 years of OA abstinence. She lived in Seattle, Washington. And she said, "Go buy a big book." I said, "A what?" "Yeah, go buy a copy of the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous." I said, "I'm not an alcoholic." She said, "I'm just telling you to do what worked for me. Get a big book, get a highlighter, start reading from the very beginning, the preface and the forewords. Anytime something resonates for you, highlight it, write about it, and email me your writing." So that's how I started working the steps. But then, on March 19, 2002, a miracle happened. I was struck abstinent. I put down my alcoholic foods, and I never picked them up again. But I knew it wasn't me who did it. It had to be a God thing. because the day before all I ate was sugar. There's no way I could have made that happen. But as I worked the program, I was finally realizing my alcoholic foods was not really my problem. They were the solution to my problem. My problem was I had the disease of alcoholism. I had the ism, the inner spiritual malady. And the reason I used food was because I was not in my right mind, and I desperately needed ease and comfort to deal with life because I didn't know how to do it. But I didn't have any relationship with God at that time. I didn't come into program with a higher power. So when I worked step 4, I uncovered and discovered what was blocking me from God. And it turned out it was fear. You know, the AA 12 and 12 says fear is the chief activator of my defects, and that was definitely true for me. So when I was a kid, I threw up every single morning before school. We moved every 1 or 2 years, so guess what? I was always the new kid. I was always the new fat kid. And I got teased every single day at school. So I was terrified to go to school. But I carried that morning fear with me into my adulthood. I went through my whole life every morning afraid to go to a new job or to show up for any new situation. So these are my top fears. Fear of hospitals and doctors. Fear of needles and blood. Fear of enclosed spaces. And a lifelong fear of getting cancer. Several years ago, I was diagnosed with melanoma skin cancer. When I looked it up on the internet, it kept talking about death. And I went, oh my God. I said, you have got to be kidding. You want to know what this means? I have to go to the hospital. There's going to be blood and needles. And they said it's outpatient surgery. I'm going to be awake. And they said they have to cover me with a sheet to keep the germs from spreading. Shoot me now. So there I was, backed up against a wall, and the wall was on fire. My worst nightmare was staring me in the face. And I did something I never do. I asked for help. I prayed to God to help me deal with my panic. And I turned to God with skin on. I called people in program. I said, I'm going crazy. You need to pray for me. Then I called a healer friend of mine in Maui. I said, I want you to send me healing energy, but I don't want you to heal my body. I want you to heal my mind and my attitude, because I am freaking out. This is not going to work. So the day of surgery comes, and I greet the surgeon, I greet the nurse, I strip down, I get on this table. I was really calm. The doctor gave me a local anesthetic, and he said, tell me if you feel pain. Well, I knew he was cutting me open, but I didn't feel pain, just pressure. Then the nurse came by, and I said, excuse me, could you move the sheet a little bit away from my face, because I have claustrophobia. Well, that's a miracle, because I usually don't say anything. I just lay there and suffer. Meanwhile, people were coming in and out of this room. Staff people, they were picking up surgery supplies, and I went, hey doc, looks like you're having a party in here. Is there anybody else you want to invite? Then the nurse comes by and she says, Gerri, how are you doing down there? I said, I'm doing great. How's the surgeon doing? I could not believe I was cracking jokes in the middle of surgery. It took about an hour. And 3 days later, the surgeon called, said he got the lab results. They told him he removed all the cancer and it didn't spread. But there's a strange thing about this story I want to tell you. You would think I would remember that turning to God was what got me through this fear. But no. Tomorrow morning, I'm going to wake up and forget everything I just said to you. That's why I need step 11. I need to get restored to sanity every morning, or I'm going to go hide under the covers. I'm going to try to change people, situations, whenever I get scared. And then my insanity is going to come back all over again. So the true miracle for me of working step 11 is that I finally stopped waking up afraid. I don't know what date that happened, but sometime during the last 23 years, I started to believe everything was going to work out and that God was on the job. And it was safe for me to let go and let Him run my life. And this new attitude got me through 2 bouts of cancer, a bankruptcy, losing jobs, getting flooded out of my house, my mom dying, my dad dying, and I did not pick up the alcoholic foods. That's a total miracle. That's step 11. Thank you.